YouTube, what is going on? Northeast Ohio Sports Cards here for some undervalued players? Maybe? All right. So, what we're doing today, I have dug in to Market Movers. Has a very interesting tool that allows you to essentially, they're called set and year charts. So, what I did was I went back through the 2014-15 class up until today, so the 2019 class, and I looked at base Prism PSA 10s. And I ran the charts, which you can only do 2 years at a time, so I had to do this multiple times. I ran the charts dating back to October 10th through today. And what it does is it graphs them all. You can see this crazy ass graph here. And lists them all in a nice little neat little list. So it's all the PSA 10s base prisms from, in this case, the 2018 and 2019 class. What I was curious about was we are now a full week into the NBA preseason. We had a nice little run up with NBA offseason moves and all that craziness that happened. I was curious who hasn't gone up yet. So we know Trae Young got a huge spike. SGA's seen a huge spike. Kobe White's been spiking the last week or so. So on and so forth. There's been plenty of guys going up. But I was interested. My whole thought process for doing this was, is there anyone the market has forgotten about? Who has the market slipped through the cracks? Is there anybody at all? Or is everything seem to be on the way that it should be? And I feel like I found 10 different players. And I'm not saying these are necessarily buys. These are just 10 intriguing players that the market has not, there hasn't been an increase on, or the increase has been very small over the last, 2 months, essentially. We're basically going back just shy of 2 months. So, all right, let's get into the 10. They're in no particular, well, I guess they are in a semi-particular order. We're going to start at 18, 19 and work our way backwards. And I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. But we all know how that goes. All right. Before we get into it, YouTube nonsense down below, like, comment, and based on YouTube analytics, for the 60% of you that watch my videos that are not subscribed, obviously you keep coming back, click the little sub button. That easy. For those of you that are subscribed, the 1.2%, or no, 11% of you that have notification bell thing turned on, I guess you're supposed to click that too. I don't know. Anyway, if you're intrigued by Market Movers and the data that it gives, the links to that are down below as well. So feel free to check that out. All right, let's hop into this. So it lists these players in alphabetical order by first name, nice and easy. And you can see we normally get like the charts and graphs and stuff that we look at on the channel all the time. We have the percentage change, number of sales, et cetera, et cetera. The main thing I was focused on for the purpose of this is this far right column right here. For the percentage change. I was curious to see who's gone down, who's gone up, how much they've gone up, how little they've gone up. So the intriguing players that I was kind of surprised about that have not seen big, and like I said, I'm not saying I necessarily like these players to go buy, though there's one on here that I was really intrigued by, that I was really surprised by. And I might look to do something with it. But it just was interesting to me that these players did not see a bump yet. So as we scroll down this list, and you're going to be shocked by this because we talk about them all the time, the very first one that intrigued me was Darius Garland. Yes, Northeast Ohio, Cavs biased, whole 9 yards, whatever. He's been starting the last 3 games because Colin Sexton has a bad ankle. And he's looked pretty good. Talked about him multiple times before on the channel. He was the 5th overall pick in the draft last year. He has a high pedigree. His college season prior to his rookie year, he missed the entire season with an injury. So he's basically learning on the fly last year after taking a year off. He is fully healthy, has had an off 3/4 of a season and a very long off season to improve. And all the reports from the Cavs beat writers were all the players were raving about him. And his in their workouts prior to the preseason starting, and that has carried over into the preseason. His PSA 10 still sits at around $75 and has only gone up 4% in the last 2 months. That is intriguing to me. I can tell you right now, I have already bought Garland. I have a PSA 9, and I've actually already bought a while ago, back when he was at his low in early October, a bunch of raw on Star Stock, which I've actually already sold most of those. I bought them for like $4 or $5, and I've been selling them for around 18 to 20 this past week or so on Star Stock. But under $100 for a PSA 10 Prism rookie in these days is pretty cheap, and I just find it interesting that he has not gone up that much. The next one, this one isn't as surprising because he's hurt, but I'm intrigued that the market hasn't started to pick up on him yet, because at some point in time he's going to be back. It wasn't like a super major injury. He's a very important player, and that's Jaren Jackson Jr. His base PSA 10 has basically sat at 175 since the bottoming of the offseason. Once again, that October 10th-ish date is when a lot of the cards bottomed out. And then they started slowly ticking back up from there. So the 175 price point seems fair for him. I'm just intrigued that the price hasn't moved at all yet. I feel like as soon as news comes out that he's getting close to coming back, and maybe he starts practicing or playing or whatever, and I think he's supposed to be out into January, this is going to start going up almost immediately, and then heaven forbid he actually plays well. And they might limit him, who knows. But I just think there's really easy gains to be made there, potentially. I don't necessarily know that I would go in on him, but a lot of people like JJJ, and I just found it intriguing that his card prices haven't moved at all, basically in the last 60 days, given what some of this stuff has done in the last 60. Moving on down the list. Oh, another one. And yeah, I know. I can't help myself. KPJ. Now, he has not yet played. His PSA 10 Prism is basically the same as Garland's, around $75. And just yesterday, it came out that his weapon and marijuana charges have been dropped. The league could still suspend him. And I think he might start out a little bit slow because he's not played in the preseason. So maybe his prices actually dip a little bit more. But I'm telling you, the kid's good. And when he gets on the floor, he's going to have a game that pops off and the market's going to go crazy for him, especially at these reduced prices. So just keep my boy KPJ in the back of your head. I'm sitting on a mountain load of him. But I got into it all really cheap. So he would basically have to retire tomorrow for me to lose money on it. The last one from the 18-19 class, and I'm really on the edge about this one just based off player history. But I think the upside could potentially be there, and he appears to be healthy so far in the preseason. Marvin Bagley III. His PSA 10 Prism's only up 10% the last 60 days-ish. And most of these guys are up 20 to 40%, depending on the player. He's looked pretty decent in the preseason. They played. I'm recording this late Thursday night. They're actually playing right now, so I don't necessarily know how well he did in that game yet. But so far, so good. This one is high risk though because of his injury history. But it just intrigued me that he has not gone buzzy yet. And if I bought in the Bagley and he had like a really good week or two, I would at least look to cash out on some of that just to protect myself because he just has a history of injuries. But I mean, he was a top 3 pick in the draft. Not that that means everything in the world, but he's picked there for a reason, and he showed some flashes in the limited run that he's got. He just keeps getting hurt. And I think he's on the path to get a ton of playing time. So that was the last one from the 18-19 class. Let's hop over to 17-18 really quick. And there's some interesting names on here. Scroll down a little bit. The first one on the list, there's not an image available for this one. Only a 10% change and sits right around about $100. And that's DeJounte Murray from the Spurs. Now, Derek White, who they kind of split time, has a foot injury and is going to be out, they said, into January and maybe into February. So DeJounte Murray is going to get all the run. And there's a decent chance that Spurs team is mediocre at best, and they sell off some pieces at the halfway season point, at the trade deadline. And I can see DeJounte Murray completely establishing himself. And he's really showed some flashes. Well, once again, if you could pick up a PSA 10 prism of someone with upside for around $100, I think that's a pretty good deal. And with that being said, if you wanted to, maybe this is a little out of your budget, this could be applied to all of their base cards as well. If the PSA 10 hasn't gone up, their base cards haven't gone up either. So if $100 for DeJounte Murray PSA 10 seems wild to you, maybe you go look and see what his base cards are priced at, or his raw cards are priced at, and just go pick up some raw. Same with anyone else that we're talking about on this list. So you could immediately go to lower price points. And if you wanted to stick with graded, go to PSA 9. Or if you wanted to go cheaper, go raw. Just saying, you have plenty of options here. And once again, I'm not saying that these are necessarily, oh my God, run out and buy these. I just find it interesting that these are some interesting names that have not seen price jumps yet. Next one, and this one surprised the hell out of me, and that's John Collins. His PSA 10 Prism in the last 60 days has actually gone down 5%. It basically sits right at around $200 to slightly under $200. When I verified that, I wanted to double check because I didn't think that was right off the top of my head. There was actually a buy it now on eBay for like $185. I know big guys don't get a lot of love. That's going to be a flashy team this year. They're going to be on national TV a lot. I just found it intriguing that his stuff hasn't gone up the way Trae Young's has and DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish and all these other Hawks guys have. So just an interesting one. Like I said, I'm not real big on buying in the bigs, but that one intrigued me based off of a lot of the other Hawks players. Two of my favorites, not my favorite, but two of my favorites. And this guy's been getting buzzy lately, so I don't think this one's going to last very long. And that's OG Anunoby, and we'll just talk about them together. The second one is Pascal Siakam. Both these players on the Raptors, OG is really going to carve out a role for himself this year, I think. He put up tremendous numbers when Ibaka was off the floor. And Ibaka's gone now. He's going to be their starting wing, and he's looked great in the preseason. And in addition to that, prior to the bubble, Siakam was great in 2018 and really good at the beginning of last season. And then whatever happened to him, he fell apart. His stuff's quite a bit higher, so I'm a little scared about that. His PSA 10 sits around 300, but it's actually down 10% since the low point in the market. And OG is sitting around this says 95. The last sale was on 12/2. There is not a lot of these cards. I don't believe you could find one for 95 anymore. I think the cheapest one you could find is around 130. So essentially this card has stayed perfectly flat. I do not expect that to last. I think you're going to start seeing this card trending up very quickly here. It already has. His raw stuff on Star Stock is way up. And I've been looking at some other stuff with him because I've been trying to buy some of his stuff prior to the season starting, and I keep getting outbid, and a lot of people are competing for his stuff. But I really like OG quite a bit. So he's the last of the 17 and 16 class guys. I have two more left. And one of these really intrigues me. And I know we don't like to buy bigs very often. So let's dip down to the 14-15 class. And the first guy on the list and the guy that intrigues me the most on this entire thing is Embiid. His PSA 10 is down 5%. So it's basically, we're just going to call that flat. It's basically $280. Let's just call it an even 3, because the ones that I saw listed were right around 3. Best offer, buy it now. So you might be able to get a little under that. To me, him for 300, there's only a pop count of 1,000 on these cards. When you go back in years, the pop counts get a lot smaller. There's still the James Harden rumors floating around. They have a whole new system there, new front office, new coach, new players brought in that I think is better going to fit that system. I could see the Sixers potentially being really good this year, whether they make a Harden trade or not. And if Embiid and Simmons can figure it out, or they can't and they trade for Harden and Simmons together on the same team, even the trade news alone would immediately bump Embiid's value. If Harden gets traded there, Embiid stuff's going to fly up, just like we saw with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. I just really feel like for around $300 for Embiid seems like a steal. And yes, there is some injury risk with that. And yes, you're capping your ceiling a little bit because he's a big, but when he's firing on all cylinders, he's probably the best center in the league, or at least right there with Jokic, maybe right behind Jokic. It would be them two, 1A, 1B. And $300 for that kind of potential seems insane to me. Because they're an Eastern Conference Finals, not favorite, but contender. And then the other one is the same position. And this one I like less based off the price point. If I was picking between the two, I would buy Embiid. And that's Karl Anthony Towns. Now, he has gone up a little bit, but only about 5 or 10%. This sits at around $340, his PSA 10 Prism. I don't know that the Timberwolves are going to be good, but Cat's probably going to put up huge numbers. Once again, between the two, I would prefer Embiid, but Cat also intrigues me if you're a big Cat fan. So, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope this was semi helpful. I just found it, like I said, I was sitting around the night and I'm like, playing around on market movers, and usually this is how this happens. What's some interesting things, yada, yada, yada. And then I got this brilliant idea of like, well, wait, who hasn't the market caught up to yet? Because sometimes you find these guys that slip through the cracks. To me, Embiid is the one that intrigues me the most. Whether it's PSA 10, PSA 9, Raws, whatever you're looking at, I just feel like he has the most potential to see a monster price hike out of everyone we talked about on that list. There's some intriguing names on there. Some of them I like, some of them I wouldn't necessarily buy. But thought you guys might find it interesting. And it's also just an interesting tool that I don't use very often in the Market Movers tool set, the set and year chart, but I found it handy to try to get my hands wrapped around what the market has been doing in mass with some of these cards. It's also interesting to see like who's gone up the most from certain classes. When you go backwards in years, it's also kind of interesting to see the lack of movement on some guys and how much more is going down. The further you go back, the more guys go down. It's interesting. Just because they're getting older in their careers and more established, and the shine comes off them is my thought process on why those guys go down. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Like, comment, sub, etc. All the YouTube nonsense, all that jazz. I am Sunday morning update, obviously, will be the next video out on Sunday morning. After that, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with Christmas week yet. And my work schedule is about to get absolutely bonkers. So we'll see. I mean, I'm still going to be posting videos, obviously, but they might not be as frequent as they have been. So anyway, peace